Ladies and gentlemen, by now you already know Donald Trump has won the election. He is back. He has won. Not only that, it looks like the Senate's going to go red. The House is going to stay slightly red. So we got a lot of news on that front, but mainly how does it affect the UFC? We will get into that. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Kamaru Usman is very possible for UFC 310. Interim title fight, probably still the main event. We'll see. And then Sean Strickland scolded by UFC bantamweight Song Yadong over remarks towards Chinese people. So we'll definitely get into that as well. And then, of course, you got the big matchup between Neil Magny and Carlos Prates.
Finish him. Oh, my goodness. 25 seconds left. Oh, my goodness. This could be a 10-8. Mike's in. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. And that's it. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. And Mike can't believe it as he looks up at the ceiling. He goes down with 15 seconds left. Neil Magny gets the big TKO finish here. 4:45 into round 3. Unbelievable. He's going to move to 29-12, and that kind of saves his career for the moment.
Boy, Li Jingliang is getting out of there. He's never been KO'd in a fight. Oh, another left, another left. Come on, Prates, finish him, baby. Finish him, baby. Boom. Yes. Boy, Li Jingliang is a tough dude, man. He's taking left, right, takes a big left, and that's it, man. That's it. Carlos Prates finishes Li Jingliang.
Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege.
What up, what up? It's your boy Chris Cross checking in. This is TC MMA Podcast. This week, UFC Vegas 100, Neil Magny versus Carlos Prates. We got all the predictions for you, or at least 5 or 6 of them, that's for sure. It's going to be a good card, but, breaking news, you may or may not have already heard Cody Garbrandt is out of the co-main event. So that's a dagger for sure. That's a big name you want in the co-main event. Will Miles Johns, his opponent, stay on the ticket? We'll see. But first and foremost, listen, Donald Trump won the election. It's an amazing thing. And not only did he win the election, it appears, at least right now, that we're not going to have a divided government. Meaning, like someone wins the presidency, but they lose the Senate or the House. Instead, it's going to, more than likely, it looks that way, that it's going to be all red. And that's kind of, even if you're not a Trump fan, it's kind of good for the country in a sense that they can get some stuff done. But I couldn't help, I feel a sense of relief today. I'm excited, but really relief. And immediately, for some reason, I started thinking of all the people that voted for Kamala Harris. Some would vote for whoever the Democratic Party put up, right? In this case, Harris wasn't elected, she was selected. But there's a lot of people that have been gaslit and are in fear today, are a little nervous. I know when I wake up after an election, it totally goes the other way, which has happened several times in my life. At other points, I've been on one side of the fence and I've kind of slid to the middle, to the other way a little bit. I'm more in the middle with everything. But I know a lot of people are waking up today very nervous because they've been gaslit for the last year and a half at least, if not 8 years. And I don't believe personally that Trump is going to be as bad as those fears waking up today. But that's because you can't buy into all the nonsense. And a lot of people did. I was in more fear because it's like no one even voted for this person. to be running against Trump. That's what my biggest fear was. I mean, if you lose this one, it's trouble for years. So, to me, for the country, it went the right way, but I'm sure a lot of people differ on that today as well. Respectfully so. I get it. But how does this affect the UFC? That's really what we want to talk about, right? Dana White and UFC get their biggest reward for $20 billion TKO holdings after Trump's presidential election win. I think it's up. Can't remember the percentage, but it's up big. I know Tesla's up like 15% early morning stock market open, right? So obviously certain things are going to go up. You would think, or you could predict, now that Trump has been elected, and the stock market is probably going to do well for the simple fact that it's looking like it's not a divided government. So that means, divided government means nothing is happening for 2 years, because you got to get both sides to agree, and we know how that goes. So things will be able to get done. That's probably a good thing. And we'll see how it goes. But Dana White last night on the stage with Trump. And listen, if you're a UFC fan like me, and this guy gets elected president, and there's the CEO of your favorite sport on the stage with him, that's just a good thing. It can't be a bad thing for the UFC. And I'm really, I got a lot of reasons I like Trump, but in terms of the UFC, I like the fact that I know that Hamza will be able to fight in America now after January 20th. That visa will be allowed because Dana White will ask, or at least to look into it, and Trump will, and then, good things will happen. So from a UFC fan perspective, you got at least that to look forward to if you're on the other side of the fence. So that's right now in the immediate future how it affects the UFC. Obviously, it's good for 4 years. Not that the UFC has anything in their way at this point, but it's just massive for the sport, for the CEO to be up there with the president-elect. Just put it into perspective. It's a wild thing. And not only that, then called out to speak, and he spoke for like a minute and probably said 4 minutes of information. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Dana White making headlines today. As we move forward, is John Jones injured coming into UFC 309? So there's all this talk now that John Jones is injured. I don't think he's injured. He had his toe taped. I saw it is what it is. It's an old injury. So, he's probably being protected. But this is just what happens leading up to fights, right? The bottom line is John Jones is going to run through Stipe, and then we're going to get the Tom Aspinall fight, hopefully, that we fully expect to get. But yeah, I'm believing John Jones is going to be just fine. Also, Shavkat Rakhmonov, right? Can't fight Bilal Muhammad for the title. So my first thing is, do you even fight, right? I say no. I think you take the Colby Covington approach. You're not fighting anybody else. You're going to wait on the title. Others have done that too. But Shavkat is a different breed. He's like, bring on Usman. So now negotiations are going on for UFC 310 interim title fight. It doesn't really matter because now the winner of that would fight Bilal Muhammad instead of necessarily Shavkat. So, now he's got to go through Usman, who is going to want to come back after being down here for a little bit and want, got something to prove. And that's going to be highly interesting because I don't think Usman is done by the least. So that's a rough thing for Shavkat, but he's a bad dude, so he's going to fight. Now, Sean Strickland was scolded by UFC bantamweight Song Yadong over latest remarks towards Chinese people, telling Helen Yi, last time I saw your interview with Sean, and I heard him say a lot of negativity about Chinese people. However, I don't think he's ever been to China before, yet believes Chinese people are a certain way. And listen, when Sean Strickland says anything that he says and you respond to it, Sean Strickland already won. That's the bottom line. And I know you got to respond, but when you do, he won. And he feeds off that. And it is what it is. Sean Strickland's going to say whatever he wants to say. You don't always have to respond to it. I'm not saying remain quiet. I'm saying you got the right to respond. But at the same time, now you got the conversation going, and that's what Sean Strickland wants. He's not worried about what you say about him in the least. So, and he's not going to stop. So just by responding, you're not changing anything, except you're making it a bigger issue, which is either, could be described as good or bad. But that's what's going on there. So you got a couple things in the headlines, but of course the election last night dominating today. For example, the views on our channel are at an all-time low over the last 48 hours because everything has been about the election. Totally expected that. It'll bounce back up, but rightfully so. It should have been all about the election last night. I didn't even do much yesterday in terms of producing any content because I was just, sick to my stomach all day, more or less. And now it's over and I feel a sense of relief, but I'm exhausted. Mentally, really. Mentally exhausted. So let's jump into the first fight. I believe we got Gerald. No, not Gerald Mearshart. We'll get to him in a minute. Cody Stamann. That's right. Cody Stamann versus Damon Blackshear going down at UFC Vegas 100. This is a big deal this week because it's, this goes back all the way to the pandemic till now. They started fighting in the Apex. We're at UFC Vegas 100, and it's getting ready to go into renovation. So the UFC is going to be traveling now. The UFC is going to be mobile. But this is still a big one just, for the history and all that they've made it to UFC Vegas 100. Apex Center kind of saved the UFC there, or we wouldn't have had a lot of fights. That's for sure. So UFC Vegas 100, here's Cody Stamann versus Damon Blackshear. It's a big one. In the bantamweight division at UFC Vegas 100, you got Cody Stamann taking on Damon Blackshear. And this is a high-level fight, and Blackshear is a 3-1 favorite. Interesting. Stamann 21-7, Blackshear 14-7. Blackshear's, a tall guy. He's 4 inches taller than Stamann, standing at 5'10". He's 30, right in the middle of the prime. Cody Stamann 34, still in the prime, and a veteran. In terms of the reach, forget about it. Blackshear 9-inch, or about 8 or 9 inch reach advantage. He's a switch stance fighter. Stamann stands right-handed. Both guys right at 4.3, 4.4 significant strikes per minute, and both guys right at about 2.3 takedowns every 3 rounds. So we're being exact with the numbers because they're basically even. Both guys are going to get 2 takedowns on average over the course of the fight. Now, Cody Stamann lost back-to-back fights to 2 good fighters. Keep this in mind. Taylor Lapilus, decision. Douglas Silva de Andrade, decision. Fought decently well in those fights. He was just outmatched. But before that, he won 2 against Luan Lacerda, who's a 12-3 fighter, by decision. He had 103 significant strikes, and Eddie Wineland by KO. Now, Blackshear, on the other hand, lost back-to-back fights as well to Montel Jackson and Mario Bautista. He was KO'd by Jackson in 18 seconds. Wow. Prior to that, he beat Jose Johnson by sub, Twister, and Luan Lacerda, but he KO'd him. Okay. So that might be why he's the favorite, right? Because Cody Stamann didn't KO him, but he landed 103 significant strikes. So it's going to be interesting, man. It's really a close fight. I don't see how Blackshear's a 3-1 favorite. And in fact, I'm going to lean towards Cody Stamann. I like the fact that he's got 21 wins, same amount of losses as Blackshear, but 7 more wins. So Cody Stamann's 34, right? He's more of a veteran than Blackshear at this point, although both guys have enough fights to call them pretty much veterans. But Stamann's just farther along. This will be his 30th fight. So I like him to win just on experience in these settings because the numbers are even. And he's nearly a 2.5 to 1 underdog. But in my opinion, he still wins by decision. Mainly on the feet. I think it's, there's going to be some takedowns and control time, but the significant strikes are going to become the ultimate deciding factor. So therefore, Stamann wins, again, in my opinion. Bantamweight division. UFC Vegas 100. Yeah, so right out the gate, a tough prediction, right? A very tough prediction. We're going with the underdog in this one. So Damon Blackshear is a good fighter. So is Cody Stamann because he's got that hunger. Blackshear's probably a little better, but Cody Stamann is hungry. And that's why we make the prediction that we make. And it's going to be tough up and down this card. It's always tough at the end of the year. It's always tough because the matchmakers do a great job of pinning guys, or fighters really, against each other that are in similar situations. And of course, this round, this goes round and round throughout the years. But even at the end of the year, when people are very active, in this particular year, and you come into the final fight cards of the year, and some of these fighters are fighting 2, 3, 4 times in a year, you're starting to really get to know where they're at right now, and it makes the predictions even tougher. It certainly does. But yeah, that's the way we're going in that one. So we're just going to jump around a little bit because there's been 2 fights already taken off this card. So the whole main card is going to be shuffled around anyway. So let's just get the one I like next, and that's Gerald Meerschaert versus Rainier de Ritter. Big middleweight fight, big guys. Gerald Meerschaert is something like 36-17. So he wins a lot, but he's lost a lot. To me, he's a very tough fighter, but de Ritter's on the come up. So we'll see which way it goes. In the middleweight division at UFC Vegas 100, you got veteran, big-time veteran, Gerald Meerschaert takes on newcomer making his UFC debut, Rainier de Ritter. So Meerschaert, 37-17, he's got 54 professional fights. De Ritter has 19, he's 17-2, but making his UFC debut. De Ritter's 2 inches taller at 6'3", he's 34, Meerschaert's 36. De Ritter, 1 inch reach advantage, 79-78. Now Meerschaert fights left-handed, lands 3.1 significant strikes per minute, and lands like 2 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds. Meerschaert, 34% takedown defense, that's a problem. But he won the last 2 fights by submission, so if he goes to the ground, he's okay, right? Beating Shabazian by submission, submitting Brian Barberena. So, he's got some momentum right now. But De Ritter, in his 17 wins, has 11 submissions. So he's good on the ground. Won 4 by KO. He was also KO'd twice in 2 of the last 3 fights. But both of those were to the same opponent, Anatoly Malikin, right? He KO'd him twice. And one, he was just forced to give up. But in his last fight, he did win by TKO at UAE Warriors. So here's the deal. I like the fact that De Ritter can submit opponents and Gerald Meerschaert has weak takedown defense. But Meerschaert is ever the veteran. He has shown if the fight goes to the ground, he can find ways to submit you. So that's where the game is going to be played, on the ground. We really don't know how good De Ritter is on the ground, but Meerschaert's going to have no problem going there. And that's where the fight's going to play out. And I got no choice but to go with the UFC veteran. I mean, Gerald Meerschaert is a pretty good fighter. Pretty good fighter. And he's been around a while, and he's won more fights than he's lost in the UFC. Not in UAE Warriors, not in one championship, none of that. But he's won a lot of fights in the UFC. So I have no choice but to go with him here. And I believe he's going to get the finish by submission in round 2. That's my opinion. But even if it goes to a decision, he's going to win 2 rounds out of 3 by controlling his opponent to move to 38-17 here in the middleweight division, UFC Vegas 100. And this is one guy I tend to believe in, especially fights like this. I mean, when he fought Hamza, they made him sound like he was terrible. Lost in 17 seconds. He's a nobody. I'm like, no, Hamza is just that good. I mean, Gerald Meerschaert is a good fighter, and he showed it after that fight, winning several fights after the fact, right? He's so terrible, but he comes back and he wins I want to say 4 of the next 5. Maybe I'm confusing fighters, but he definitely won more fights than he lost over the next 4 or 5 after the Hamza fight. So, this guy is definitely a problem. He's not easy to beat. He's definitely not easy to beat. And we'll take him, obviously, to win that one. Now, in another good one, you got Kowalkiewicz versus Denise Gomes. The ladies are throwing down. Let's get into it. In the women's strawweight division at UFC Vegas 100, you got Carolina Kowalkiewicz coming in at 16-8, taking on the Brazilian. It's Poland versus Brazil. And Denise Gomes comes in at 9-3. Now, Carolina, 1 inch taller at 5'3", she's 39. Gomes, 24. Wow, 15-year age difference. That's incredible. Carolina, 1 inch reach advantage. Both stand right-handed. Carolina has the advantage in the activity, 5.7 significant strikes per minute. That's really good. Gomes, 4.5. That's not bad either, but not as good as 5.7. Both fighters less than 1 takedown over the course of 3 rounds. Carolina, 73% takedown defense. That'll even more so keep the fight standing. Now, she did lose to Yasmin Lucindo in her last fight, another Brazilian, by decision. Beat Diana Belbita by decision, landing 141 significant strikes. Beat Vanessa Demopoulos by decision, 139 significant strikes. So when she goes off in activity, she gets the win. But what Lucindo did is dominate the ground game with 2 takedowns and keep the position for most of the fight. So that's what led to the reduced significant strikes. Will Gomes take the same approach? She's got a 67% takedown defense. That's average, but not bad at all, right? Beat Eduardo Mora by split decision, lost to Angela Hill by decision, beat Yasmin Uregui by KO. So very, very tough fight here to predict. The bottom line is you see this a lot. You have a very good striker who's stifled by takedowns. But Denise Gomes doesn't land a lot of takedowns. It doesn't mean she can't. Doesn't mean she won't go for it. But Carolina, being a good striker, it also pays to have good takedown defense, which she does. So I got no choice but to go with Carolina Kowalkiewicz to get the win here because of the takedown defense and the advantage in the stand-up. Gomes can strike too, but Carolina should get the job done here by decision. Look for it to be over 100 significant strikes to be the 17-8 women's strawweight division, UFC Vegas 100. Yeah, and that fight's going to be a good one for sure. I mean, for sure. Just like most of the fights up and down this card are tough fights to predict. And who knows where this fight will land, right? It was fight 3. Now it's all the way down to the prelim main event. Will it move back up with Cody Garbrandt being out? You have to beef up the main card for sure. But Carolina Kowalkiewicz will win this fight. Don't often go against the Brazilians, but we are in this one. Now, in another highly interesting fight, right? Luana Pinheiro takes on Jillian Robertson. Another female versus female fight. So it better be female versus female, right? But yeah, this is going to be a highly interesting fight, and I think a battle throughout. Just an absolute battle that really can go either way. In the women's strawweight division at UFC Vegas 100, you got Luana Pinheiro taking on Jillian Robertson. And I like this one because it's going to be a tough prediction. So let's jump right into it. Pinheiro's 11-3, Robertson 14-8. Brazil versus Canada. Don't let the records fool you. Robertson, 3 inches taller, 5'5". She's 29, Pinheiro 31. Both ladies 63-inch reach. Both stand right-handed. Pinheiro's a little bit more active on the feet, 3.6 significant strikes per minute to 2.8. But Robertson can take the fight to the ground, so can Pinheiro. Remember, she's Brazilian, right? Both well over 2 takedowns per 3 rounds, so it's almost 1 every round. Pinheiro 66% takedown defense. Robertson 41. That's not very good. That's way below average. Pinheiro's coming off back-to-back losses to Angela Hill, submission. She was KO'd by Amanda Rivas. Before that, beat Michelle Waterson-Gomez and Sam Hughes. So right, she's better than 2 of those fighters, below the other 2. So, she's right around the Angela Hill, Michelle Waterson-Gomez level. Jillian Robertson, on the other hand, is coming in off back-to-back wins over Michelle Waterson-Gomez, decision, and Poliana Viana, KO. So the common opponent, Waterson-Gomez, Robertson dominated her on the feet, 77-21 in significant strikes. On the other hand, Gomez dominated Pinheiro in significant strikes, 61-44. Probably should have won the fight. So that tells you it's going to be very close, right? And the odds favor Robertson, which is the way I was leaning anyway. I just look at the significant strikes per minute, and you're like, how is Robertson so low? It's because early in the career, she was going for a lot of takedowns. Wasn't utilizing the ground and pound quite well, trying to get submissions, not always getting them, so you're just running the clock, and you're not landing significant strikes. But she changed that in her last 2 fights. 77 against Gomez and keeping her down to like 20-something. That's ridiculous. Not even 20-something. 77-21. So I got no choice but to lean towards Jillian Robertson here. Likely to get the decision. She's got to be careful of the takedown ability of Pinheiro, though, who's definitely going to attempt those. But Robertson will, even if it goes to the ground, she'll be able to flip some positions here to grind out a decision win and move to 15-8, women's strawweight division, UFC Vegas 100. Great job, Chris. We went against Brazil again. It doesn't usually turn out well when we go against Brazil in like 3 or 4 fights. It just, some of these Brazilians are going to come through. So we'll see how it plays out. But not thinking that way, in the long haul, just fight by fight, listening. It's like, oh boy, it doesn't usually turn out well. Now, another fight that's going to turn out to be big with Cody Garbrandt out is Ricky Tercios versus Bernardo Sopai, right? Because Ricky Tercios has a decently big enough name to get you interested. And again, with Garbrandt out, it makes this fight even bigger. These guys got to perform. So let's get into this one right now. In the bantamweight division at UFC Vegas 100, you got Ricky Tercios taking on Bernardo Sopai. And Ricky Tercios is one of those guys that a lot of people like, but this will be a tough one. He's 13-4, Sopai 11-3. This is American versus Albanian. Tercios 3 inches taller. He's pretty tall for a bantamweight at 5'9". He's 31, right in that prime window. Sopai 24. Tercios 5-inch reach advantage. Both guys stand right-handed. Tercios 4.6 significant strikes per minute to 3.1 for Sopai. The catch, though, is that Sopai lands over a takedown per round, so he's going to look to control the fight for sure. Tercios 45% takedown defense. That's a problem. That's an absolute problem. Lost to Raul Rosas Jr. by submission. I'm sure Rosas brought his takedown defense way down. It was probably near 60% before that fight. Tercios beat Kevin Natividad by split decision and lost to Iman Zahabi by decision, so he's been struggling. Sopai, 50% takedown defense. That's not great either. Lost to Vinicius Oliveira by KO, flying knee. 3rd round in the UFC debut. So, wow, I was feeling like I might go with Sopai. But this guy's got 2 losses outside the UFC. Ricky Tercios is struggling. He's going to bring his A game. He's going to want to keep the fight standing where he can dominate on the feet. And, he may give up 1 takedown, maybe 2. But he's going to win 2 out of 3 rounds if it does go the distance. And therefore, I think Ricky Tercios is going to find a way, at a sheer will, really, and activity and significant strikes, will find a way to win this fight. In my opinion, he'll move to 14-4, bantamweight division, UFC Vegas 100. Yeah, and we got to lean that way. I mean, the name's big enough. It's a fight that he's got to win. And I think that's what happens. But both these guys got to perform, right? The fight is much bigger now. You got to perform. And unless someone comes out and gets like a 30-second KO or something, then it doesn't matter. But thinking this fight could go the distance, both these guys got to perform. It can't be a boring fight. It just cannot be a boring fight. But that leads us into the main event. And these odds are going heavily in one direction day by day. Neil Magny versus Carlos Prates. Carlos Prates was a slim, not a slim favorite, but he was the favorite. But now this thing is already all the way up to like 6, 7, 8 to 1 for Prates. And that's crazy because, Neil Magny can fight, man. Neil Magny can fight. But let's see if that's the way we're going to go. Are we going to go against the grain? Check this out. In the welterweight division at UFC Vegas 100, this is your main event. You got Neil Magny taking on Carlos Prates. Magny 29-13, Prates 20-6. Neil Magny's 2 inches taller at 6'3". He's 37. He's getting up there. Prates right in the middle of the prime at 31. Magny's got a 2-inch reach advantage. He stands right-handed. Prates is a switch stance fighter. That's always an advantage. Prates more active on the feet. 4.7 significant strikes per minute to 3.4 for Magny. But the takedown game and control ability favors Neil Magny, who gets like 2 takedowns over the course of 3 rounds. Prates, no takedowns yet in his UFC career. Magny, 54% takedown defense. Coming off a loss to a tough Michael Morales by first round KO. Before that, he beat Mike Malott by 3rd round KO and lost to Ian Gary. So he's still facing some very good competition when he loses. Prates 80% takedown defense. Beat Li Jingliang by second round KO. Charles Radke, first round KO. Trevin Giles, second round KO. Mitch Ramirez at the Contender Series, second round KO. So that makes for a very, very tough prediction. Prates, as long as he can defend the takedowns well, which he does 80% of the time, he's going to eventually land a KO and get the win. But Neil Magny's going to try to tie him up. He's going to try to control him. That's going to be the big question in this fight. Can Prates defend the takedowns well enough? Not against like Li Jingliang and Charles Radke, but actually a real good takedown guy in Neil Magny. The answer to that question for me is yes. And usually I'm skeptical in fights like this. I like to go with the veteran who's got the experience. But right now, Carlos Prates has the momentum. Yeah, he's got those 6 losses outside the UFC. But again, he wasn't in his prime at that time. He's in his prime now. And this is a big fight for him to move up levels. And I think he gets the job done here against Magny. Likely to be a finish by Prates sometime in the second or third round, maybe even first. But either way, Prates is just better on the feet. Maybe he gives up a couple takedowns and he loses 2 rounds, but even if it goes to a decision, he wins 3 rounds out of 5. So I got no choice. And I like Neil Magny, but I got no choice but to go with the Brazilian here in Prates to get the win in significant strikes, defending the takedowns well enough to do it. He'll move to 21-6, in my opinion, welterweight division, UFC Vegas 100. And this is such a big one for us because if he gets to win here, and we believe John Jones wins next week, we're on a solid 3-fight win streak with 3 cards to go left on the year. So, and I fully believe we're getting John Jones next week, early fight pick. But you already know, I've already been talking about that, so you already know which way I'm going. So this is that middle one. We got it last week. We got to get this one to get to 2 in a row. And then we're definitely getting John Jones next week, 3 in a row, and run a nice win streak near the end of the year. And that's huge, absolutely huge, because that's an area not necessarily that we've struggled this year. I mean, we have a winning record, but not the record I would like. I think we're like, 20-17 right now, 21-18, something like that. And, we like to be more like 25-13, 25-12, something like that. We're not going to get there, but at least we can get it back to respectable and start to spread out the wins from the losses and finish the year strong. But we'll see. But listen, it's been great. That's going to wrap it up for today. This is your boy Chris Cross. I hope you have a great day. And as always, God bless. Peace.